And welcome everybody to episode 22 of the HOU.SEC Cast, the HOU.SEC.CON podcast. How you doing, Sam?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very excited to have Mr. Christopher Pope, DevSecOps manager at ExxonMobil. You don't always get people at that level of company to come on here and talk, and to talk at HOU.SEC.CON as he did last year. That's really cool.
It's a great talk, really good, and
Yep.
a lot of good content in that one.
Yeah, if you've got interest in DevSecOps, you need to know how to run a team. You have got the man to ask. He gave a really good talk. So let's not waste any more time here. Let's get to talking to Mr. Christopher Pope.
Let's go.
Sam Van Ryder, how you doing, sir?
I'm muy caliente, Michael Farnham. How are you?
Look at you breaking out the Spanish.
Yeah, man, I'm fluent when it comes to hot summer weather in Houston. So
You can speak English, Spanish, and some kind of weird German dialect over there or something?
The Swiss German, the most
Swiss
useless
German?
language in the world. Yeah, I speak that fluently. That's terrible, but hey,
Hey,
I
look.
can have secret conversations and know that with myself that my family doesn't understand. So.
Well, I do know on Facebook there's sometimes I have to click see translation when you're talking to some of your friends. All right. Well, we have with us Mr. Christopher Pope, DevSecOps manager at ExxonMobil. How you doing, Christopher?
Very good. How about yourself, Michael?
Doing well. It's a good day. It is hot, but hey, a lot of rain. Everything's green and steamy. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm looking forward to getting into talking about yourself and talking about your talk at HOU.SEC.CON. So really appreciate you being here. But before we do that, obviously we have to talk about HOU.SEC.CON because that's what we're here for, kind of. Now we're here for Christopher, but part of what we're here is about HOU.SEC.CON. So quick news on HOU.SEC.CON. We got the next HOU.SEC.CON user group, HSC user group, coming up July 25th. We've got the infamous, he's famous, Phil Wiley coming in. We may have a new location by then, depending on what happens. Just if you're going to come out there, just pay attention to any emails we send you out, because we may have a new location, may not. Just trying to figure some stuff out, but excited to have Phil come down. Phil's always somebody everybody wants to see. Then HOU.SEC.CON is coming up quick, 2 weeks away. Please go ahead and apply and get your tickets now. If you have applied for it and we have sent you the second email, that's a 2-step process, as we've been talking about. Go get that ticket. You got to just go through that next one. And if you haven't applied, go ahead and apply. We're gonna get to a point where we can't sell tickets anymore, so we need to get you out there. And then speaking of HOU.SEC.CON, we have got a new partnership. If you know Jarek Beeson, he is the CISO out at Waste Management, and he runs a Cyber Peeps group here in Houston. That's a cool little get together. They've got kind of a happy hour and stuff, but they also do some other things in that Cyber Peeps group where they do some mentoring, some resume reviews, that kind of thing. So it's a good group. I think it started probably about 2 or 3 months before our HOU.SEC.CON user group did, and it's extremely popular. So that is going to be the night of that monthly one that they do is going to be the night of HOU.SEC.CON. So specifically with HOU.SEC.CON, if you're there, I think it's literally like a 10-minute, maybe a little bit more walk away, or you can just drive down there. But you'll get discounted ticket sales for his Cyber Peeps group that night. So we end at 6, it starts at 7. So it's a good little spot to jump to. And we're kind of partnering with them permanently to drive more of that cybersecurity community here, especially here in Houston. So I'm excited about that. All right, that's it for me.
Right, too, right? So
Yep.
make sure we get that.
Yep. Oh yeah, we'll get all that. We'll get all those all that stuff connected and all the links up. And Sam, you got some more stuff to talk about.
Yeah. So just on the general conference and HOU.SEC.CON coming up. So we have VIP tickets on sale, but they will close on July 30th. So if you want this extra swag and the other cool stuff that comes with the VIP ticket, get your ticket now. Don't wait till the 29th. Don't wait until the 30th. Whatever What do we do in the cutoff at end of business or whatever? And inevitably we'll have some people that miss it. Put it on your calendar. Don't miss. We need that extra time so we can get the swag ordered and everything. And that's why we have to have that cutoff date. The other piece there is the sponsorships, right? So we've got well over the half of the sponsorships sold out. But at this point, we will sell out. We always do. We have a bigger venue, so that's awesome. So we have more room for folks. This always becomes an issue for folks that wait until the last minute again. So if we can, like, if you have any interest, reach out to us, our sponsor wrangler, and then we'll get you the prospectus and everything to help to sponsor and support the community, right? And it's the layout this year is really cool too in the new venue. So we should drive a lot of traffic. If you're a sponsor, you'll appreciate the engagement. And then lastly, after a sprint that we always do here over the May-June timeframe, we get the agenda out. So the agenda is live as of this podcast being posted. It should be. So excited at that. We had a phenomenal submittal, just amount of submittals and great talks across the board. Really hard to get through them all. Not just hard to get through them all, they were just really hard to choose, right? And our committee went through and rated them, and we did our diligence to make sure everything's kind of fit within the mold and what we're trying to do. So excited to have those announcements, and the keynotes are out too. And so the keynotes are freaking amazing. Like it's going to be a blast.
Yeah. I don't know. We've never had, I mean, we've had great keynotes, but to have 4 superpower keynotes that we've got coming up is amazing. I'm really, really excited about that. I don't know how we're going to outdo ourselves next year, because we've got really good keynotes, man.
I just appreciate these keynote type folks, coming here and being part of our community, because there's a lot of places you can go. Our community's strong, it's big. And it's great to kind of see these folks start to take attention to us and share their knowledge. So big, huge thanks out to those keynotes that are coming and being part of our community.
100% agree. All right. Well, I think we're all up to date on all things HOU.SEC.CON, DevSecOps, HSC user group, yada, yada, yada. We're going to get together soon, by the way, and start planning out next year's schedule for conferences. So be on the lookout for that. We don't quit, man. We're just always working on this. All right. So on to the security article. So Christopher, you supplied this one. I think it was a great article. It's got a lot of attention. So why don't you talk to us about why you chose it and what your thoughts are on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you said, a lot of attention these days on the integration of AI features into commercial products. And I think, frankly, a lot of the companies that have made these massive investments to develop LLMs and other aspects of AI are trying to see how they can monetize them and recoup those investments. So Microsoft has initially announced that they were going to provide a preview for Microsoft Recall, a new feature for Copilot Plus PCs, which have been available for about a month or so. These are PCs that have additional computing power, an additional NPU that allows them to do more AI type operations on the device as opposed to sending those out to the cloud. So, Recall is a feature that is intended to help users by taking regular, frequent kind of screenshots of what they're doing. And then they'll be able to interact with AI to say, for example, find me that article that I looked at last week. I think that's going to be useful after all. Or summarize the literature that I looked at over the last day on this topic and put that in a couple paragraphs for me, which kind of sounds interesting in terms of extending that Copilot functionality to improve people's productivity and save them time and be able to help them get more bang for their computing buck out of Microsoft. But I think there's some obvious privacy and security implications for that, which I'd be happy to delve into. And so I won't say that Microsoft is recalling Recall, but they have kind of put a bit of a pause on it and send some additional security, some additional hurdles to opt into that, at least initially, and kind of keep it in preview for a little while. Now, that still, I think, leaves some unanswered questions about the long term plans for this feature, and also I'd say concerns about with it being in preview but kind of still out there, if the code is there, is it potentially exploitable? So lot of concern about this has been, raised not just in the security community, but I'd say in the on the consumer side, in different areas, the gamer side amongst others, and how this also kind of interacts or kind of clashes with some of the signals that Microsoft has sought to send, for example, through Executive Brad Smith's communications with Congress not long ago about Microsoft really putting security first. So I think this is kind of, for some people, been kind of a contrast with the image that they've sought to project.
I think that last point you bring up is exactly it. So people on here, you can pause the video or pause it. I'm gonna ask a question. I want to quote somebody, and I want you to tell me who this person is that's speaking. If you're faced with the trade-off between security and another priority, your answer is clear: do security. Who said that? Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. And
I was
saw
going to say
that
Michael Farnham, so I was close.
you
But
were very, very
Yeah,
close.
Microsoft's a huge company, right? And there is a race. There is a race to be the leader in AI, and so a lot
Absolutely.
of these things are just being fumbled over as a business driver and not being thought of. And knowing that Microsoft's security team is amazing, that this would fall through the cracks like that. And especially now where we're seeing more sites have you go to a website and they're asking you to accept the cookies. Let's get there, right? Let's get there. Do you want this enabled? Right. And I don't think a lot of people understand. A lot of people are just going to click through anyway, right? They're not going to fully understand it. So the educational aspect is an entirely different thing, but you need to give them a choice.
Yeah, I'd say if you talk about kind of the consumer side, Sam, you mentioned there people tend to just click through, just enable, whatever the blue button is. They just click on that. They want to get to use the new OS or use the new product that they purchased. Um, I to me, one of the issues this raises, many people are not going to be aware of what they're clicking on. We already have a lot of exposure of people, particularly the not so tech savvy, sometimes older folks or people that just aren't really kind of into that aspect of tech and security, exposed to ransomware, exposed to cyber attacks. This is going to be just another potential area, whether it's the code or the data that are saved when the code is running, that can be mined by bad actors to potentially exploit some of those more vulnerable communities. And then on kind of the enterprise side, a lot of concern, kind of some of the overlaps with the consumer side, with credentials, payment data, sensitive data. But I'd say also then you get into trade secrets, intellectual property. You could be looking at a proprietary code repo or something like that. That could then be captured. And then I think a big one also is e-discovery, right? Um, what could be stored there that could be exposed in e-discovery, and could this become an aspect of e-discovery that a judge might order companies to turn that recall feature on because we don't want to lose anything, we've got to preserve that data as part of e-discovery due to an ongoing case. So I think a lot of potential for negative outcomes there.
And I think that's the case for everything AI, right? It's like any kind of, I mean, just Copilot itself. I've told this story on here before, but I was at a customer site when they were doing a tabletop exercise, and they asked me to come in and do a security trends conversation. So I talked about security resilience, that kind of thing. And one of the things I brought up was Copilot, and and you having to be worried about its use and everybody just being able to use it because it's got access. If you haven't done any kind of data governance, data security program and put that in place and know where stuff is and know what Copilot has access to, then it can pull anything in. And I'm sitting there, and the security director is like looking at all these business unit leaders going, yeah, we implemented Copilot, but we did it right. And I was like, oh crap, well, I just stuck my foot in my mouth because I'm getting this guy in trouble. But they, it literally had a lawyer in the room going, what's going on here? So you have to be aware of it. At the same time, I don't want to stick your foot in your mouth when you're talking to your customer about it, but it is a something you have to worry about. So, all right. Well, that was good. Good news segment. Christopher, thank you for submitting that one. That's definitely a big topic these days. So appreciate that.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. Well, we're going to jump off into a quick break. And on the other side of this break, we're going to talk about Christopher Pope, talk about his background, what got him into this world that we live in cybersecurity, DevSecOps specifically. And then we'll get into his talk at HOU.SEC.CON 2023. So see you on the other side of the break. All right, everybody, we're back from the break. Christopher, let's talk about you, sir. So, what got you into this mad world of cybersecurity and specifically DevSecOps? Give us your background, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, like a lot of us, I've had kind of a career journey over time as I've explored different roles and different interests, and as the technologies evolved. I've been in the IT industry about 21 years, but it was probably a role that I did kind of in what I'd call email operations that had a really strong security aspect to it because, of course, that external email side has a big security angle. You're blocking malicious connections, malicious messages. We actually were working with a vendor at the time that had kind of some early stage machine learning to analyze spam and try to separate it from the legitimate email. And so that's kind of where I got into our what at the time was a small cybersecurity group. Of course, it's grown much larger, but really enjoyed that aspect. Most of my background was in IT operations, and I did a little more kind of leadership work in operations. But I ended up in a role working with our GRC team, and I ended up working in several leadership roles in that GRC area, looking at IT security, privacy, cybersecurity, and really kind of found my home in that. Working with different teams and developers in that area is kind of where I got into DevOps and DevSecOps because it's a lot easier to design it right the first time and build it right the first time than it is to kind of try to bolt on some security on a poorly designed product at the end of the day. And so that passion is what kind of led me into my current role in DevSecOps and really looking at ways that we can shift those conversations to the left as the phrase goes and try to get that security mindset and those security philosophy working from the conversations around the design of a product as opposed to trying to do some controls after the fact.
So do you have that conversation a lot, the kind of the secure by design conversation, trying to build it from the ground up? Is that pretty typical conversation there, or?
Yeah, I'd say I have a real passion for engaging developers when it comes to security and looking to use their skills, their abilities that they have uniquely to build that into the products to make them aware of those things as they think about product architecture, as they think about functionality and I think that's definitely the best way to do it. And when we can engage them and get them working on that and see that as a win-win, and see them as kind of having agency and taking ownership of the security of their products, I think that's really what we aim for.
And that's that shift left conversation, because when I was watching your talk, you kind of pointed at somebody in the audience, right? And we're just like, oh, we were joking about the shift left thing earlier. So how do you, because I think it's fairly obvious what it means, but some people who aren't, don't do application security or interact with developers, if they're just traditional IT security, they don't really have an idea, or they may have a wrong idea of what shift left is from their perspective. How would you explain that?
Yeah, so I think I mean, it's kind of a buzzword in the DevOps and DevSecOps world, but if you look at your application life cycle kind of from left to right, where you're starting on the left with thinking of a new product, developing an idea, all the way to the right where you're kind of managing and eventually retiring a legacy product. The goal is to start that security conversation, to start those security architecture as far left in the process as you can. And of course, you look back historically across the industry, that hasn't always been the case, right? That it's somebody approaches a security team and says, we built this thing or we hired somebody to build this thing, you know do we need a security assessment? Do we need to think about security? Do we need controls? And at that point, it's almost like, damage control, right? You're kind of seeing what's happened, what are the problems that have occurred, and oftentimes you end up relying on manual controls, what one colleague of mine called the human glue, to kind of keep the security in place at that point, which is inefficient, sometimes ineffective, and it frankly just takes a lot of people's time, and is not the best use of their intellectual firepower, right? So really, you want to, from the beginning, see, what kind of libraries are we using, what kind of functionality are we using, what systems we'll be interacting with, what's our architecture as it relates to cloud versus on-prem, what are those third parties that we'll be interacting with, what's our privileged access strategy, and what kind of access do we need, and that ends up with, ideally, a lot less of that, um, human glue and kind of manual controls, periodic controls, that are more likely to fall by the wayside at the end.
The you mentioned that earlier in this conversation about it being easier to fix early on, which is no doubt the case. But the other thing that in your presentation too, you mentioned specifically it's cheaper to fix it early, right? And I think a lot of people forget. In fact, there's a whole industry on pen testing apps, right? And the OWASP and all these other things that exist because it hasn't been done in the past. And so bolting on security afterwards can get very, very expensive after the fact. And so the whole concept of the DevSecOps to me is makes a lot of sense for folks. And I think, but it does get confusing very early when you start digging into it. And one of the things you mentioned that I think was important was developing those security champions. And I think a lot of times we don't um, think about fundamentals like that of keeping it in focus and having people as part of their uh, day to day to as part of that. I mean, what other things can you talk about as far as a security champion? So how do you develop a security champion?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sam. And as I highlighted in my talk, I think that's really fundamental to successful DevSecOps. We tend to have this, in many cases, in many companies, this adversarial relationship between developers and security, right? Developers think security wants to rain on their parade, and we want to find things that are working and shut them down, or tell them no, or make it time consuming and difficult, right? And even security, just to be honest, sometimes we have this mindset of, well, developers don't care, and they're just going to download anything from anywhere, and exploit any, open ports or things that they can do to get what they see as their work done. So I think having that framework that allows communication between the two sides, and that cultivates security champions as ambassadors within the developer community, and people that have that training, and maybe people that are curious about security, and want to add that value to their applications, I think that's really essential. DevOps historically has been breaking down that silo between dev and ops, and it really needs to include the security side as well, because having those frameworks where developers can be heard by security, where their feedback is taken into account, and where we have them kind of wanting to implement security, and with the know-how to do that, is indispensable to having more secure applications.
Because one of the things you brought up in that talk is that I don't remember who didn't like the term, but they didn't like the term DevSecOps because that implies that security is not included in the first place. And when you said that, and whoever the person was that said that, I wanted to go, well, if you go read the Phoenix Project, there was like nothing about security in that book, like truly, like as it is an aspect you need to think about. And then when Gene Kim wrote another book on DevSecOps, it was the very last chapter, or he just wrote about DevOps. It was the very last chapter, and it was just kind of chunked in there. And I not called him out because it's Gene Kim. I'm not going to be like, you're an idiot, because he's a brilliant dude. But it was like, you talk about security needing to be a part of this process, and you don't talk about it anywhere until the very end. So you can't tell me that. I know he didn't create the term, but he popularized it and built a lot around it and introduced a lot of people to it with the Phoenix Project. And it's like, okay, then if security is really a part of DevOps, then it needs to be a part of it. and it needs to be called out throughout the whole process. And nobody was doing that. So I do personally, and maybe it's self-serving because I'm a security guy too, but DevSecOps I think is extremely important to have that full term.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think it's important to kind of emphasize that to keep it front and center. I mean, as you mentioned, Phoenix Project, it's a great work. It's kind of a seminal book in popularizing DevOps and kind of helping people see in a concrete level, what could this do for us as an enterprise? How could this improve our software quality, our speed to delivery? But I think, in retrospect, and obviously the book's been out for a number of years, I think getting security more involved from the get-go and maybe not having them as kind of in some ways kind of a light bad guy in the book. I think that could be a good update for sure. And I think at this point, collectively in the DevOps journey and the evolution of the process and the tools, it really needs to be kind of an equal partner with Dev and Ops.
Yeah. And I'm not asking for it to be called Sec DevOps, right? I'm not even going that far. I hate that term. I think in the order of thinking through how things work, security, should it come first? No, I don't, doesn't have to come first. It just has to be a part of the conversation. So I'm not that selfish. I'm just happy that it's in there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think the terminology is important, and I think that using the DevSecOps term is and intentionally explicitly building that into your DevOps program is very important to make sure that people know that that's part of it, and making sure that the decision makers have that training and that they interact with the security SMEs at the right points in the process.
I agree.
And you had a lot of good content in there, if you will, how to on doing the DevSecOps stuff. So, if you haven't, maybe or people listening to this haven't seen it, or it's up on YouTube, go look at it. Especially if you want to get a better understanding of what it's about, but also if you need those how-to tips. So really well done. Really enjoyed that.
It's one thing to be a DevSecOps manager or director at, a 5,000 person company, but ExxonMobil, I mean, I know you can't say a whole lot about what ExxonMobil does, but like that's got to be a lot of pressure, right? I mean, that's huge at an organization the size of yours.
I mean, we've got a big application portfolio, and like lots of large companies, it contains lots of different architectures, lots of different states of maturity. But I think building those programs and building those frameworks, that really helps to make sure that at all levels you've got people with that mentality, and building that in, or thinking about how best they can apply it even to legacy systems.
Yep. Well, any parting things you want to talk to about people who are watching this about DevSecOps? Anything specific or
I'd say to the security folks watching, I think it's as we progress in our careers, it's absolutely important to keep extending, building your skill set on the application side as well, being able to use that to be a jumping off point to engage with developers and understand how things are continuing to evolve for the world of developers, for kind of the AppSec world. And I'd encourage security folks to make those engagements, work with your leadership, work with your management sponsors to see how can you better get plugged in with the developers, and continue to build that relationship. Glad to hear that the video has gotten some views, and looking forward to this year's HOU.SEC.CON, and hoping that it'll be a good opportunity for many of those interactions and conversations to take place, not just in the context of the sessions, but outside of it. I had a lot of great conversations after the session talking about, small organizations, big organizations, what are their challenges, and it's just a great venue to build your network and to learn more about what's going on out there.
I appreciate that, and I think your point is spot on. The security people building that relationship and building knowledge of what the development teams go through. A key point I always make to people is that you think security moves fast, development moves 10 times faster. There's always a new framework coming out. Something's going on. Things are changing. A new tool in the CI/CD pipeline. I mean, it's just like constant. And then they don't just have to worry about writing code. There's infrastructure stuff that the ops people, everything's turning into code now. So everything has to get checked. So if you don't have that knowledge, at least of what you don't have to have the complete knowledge, because nobody has the complete knowledge on it, but at the very least know what they go through, know their drivers, know the business drivers behind why they're doing what they're doing, why they got to get the code out, that kind of thing. It's just security is not the end all be all of what they can think of. So great points. Well, Christopher, thank you very much. Sam, you got any final stuff?
No,
on this
great
topic?
topic, and looking forward to having you, back again, seeing you at the conference again, and so many others, and just it's great to have folks from owner operators in sharing their knowledge. I mean, from a size of company like that, I'm thankful to you for doing that. I'm thankful to ExxonMobil for letting you do that. Right. I mean, that's great that we can all help each other out with that kind of content.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Looking forward to the conference.
Same here. Thanks, Christopher. All right, everybody. Well, we are signing off episode 22. We will see you soon on episode 23 and at HOU.SEC.CON and at a HOU.SEC.CON user group near you. See you next time.